Multiple reports coming out of Arabic language media have said Israeli aircraft hit 2 military targets in Syria in the early hours of Monday. According to the reports, the main targets were 2 missile batteries near Al-Bath and Al-Qum in the Quneitra Governorate in the south of the country, and were connected to the regime of Bashar Assad and its allies, notably Iranian-backed Hezbollah terrorist sites. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, there were material losses, though so far there are no reports of any casualties. The strike comes just days after Prime Minister Naftali Bennett met in Sochi with Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin. During the meeting, the two discussed the situation in Syria, where Russia maintains a heavy presence, and the continuation of the deconfliction mechanism, which allows Israel to conduct airstrikes in Syria without Russian interference. Now, the cabinet on Sunday approved a roughly 30 billion shekels multi-year economic plan aimed at closing gaps in the Arab sector. Take a look at the following report for more details.
המטרה שלנו היא לצמצם את הפערים בחינוך, ברווחה, בתעסוקת נשים ובתחום הכלכלי-מוניציפלי במיוחד. לכן אנחנו מביאים היום לשולחן הממשלה תוכנית בהיקף רחב של כ6 מיליארד שקלים בממוצע בשנה, במשך 5 השנים הקרובות, תוכנית שתעסוק בפיתוח תעסוקה, בחיזוק מוניציפלי, בשיפור שירותי הבריאות, בעידוד ההשתלבות בהייטק ובמקצועות טכנולוגיה ובעוד הרבה דברים.
The plan seeks to advance Arab society through a series of actions. As such, some 1.4 billion shekels will be invested in developing employment, increasing the number of courses for professions in demand in the economy, and focusing on achieving proficiency in Hebrew, as well as expanding daycare centers to encourage Arab women to enter the employment circle. With regards to the health sector, the government will establish a team that will act to reduce gaps in the health services by at least 25%, focusing on women's health, first years of life, diabetes and obesity, mental health, and reducing smoking. And with regards to housing, the government will promote some 5,000 new residential units in 2022 and up to 9,000 by 2026, while rehabilitating and developing infrastructures in older neighborhoods in the Arab sector. The cabinet also approved an additional 2.5 billion shekel national multi-year plan to fight crime and violence in the Arab sector, which has seen a dramatic rise over the past year. And now in other news, ahead of the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, set to begin next week, the world seems to be waking up to climate change, and so too is Israel. On Sunday, the cabinet approved a new plan to encourage climate innovation and presented a 100 action items plan to tackle climate change. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett declared this a new national security interest of Israel. What's more, just last week, Israel's President Yitzhak Herzog announced the establishment of an Israeli Climate Change Forum to work with organizations that are already working towards combating climate change. And so joining us now with more is Professor Colin Price, head of the Department of Environmental Studies in Tel Aviv University. Welcome. So Israel seems to have suddenly woken up to climate change. Is this all due to the upcoming UN conference?
I think the whole world is waking up to climate change, including Israel. Part of it is the climate conference coming up next week. But I think it's just very obvious now to everyone around the world that climate change is real. It's here. We have to deal with it. We're seeing natural disasters all over the place, including fires in Israel and heat waves we've had here, but also in the Mediterranean. And so now climate change, I think, is very real to many people, including the politicians. And hence, I think the attention that this is getting. We also have a new government, and in the new government, we have people like the Minister of Environmental Defense, who's basically also very environmentally aware, and the Minister of Energy. So we have also change in leadership in the country, which is also making a big difference.
Now, Israel is a very small country. I mean, what is its role in climate change today?
Right. So first of all, we are suffering from climate change like most places in the world. So we're going to have to adapt to climate change. So that's part of the plans, the government plans, and how we can deal with adaptation to heat waves, to fires, to flash floods, maybe even epidemics or vector-borne diseases like the Nile virus, which comes every year, or malaria. So we have to adapt to it. But you're correct. We're a small country that even if we clean up our act and we stop emitting greenhouse gases, we're still going to suffer from climate change and it won't have a global impact. On the other hand, when we talk about mitigation, here we really have a role to play with the technologies that Israel develops, the startup mentality here. And here Israel can be basically a light to the nations. We can work on technologies for clean energies, for the agricultural sector, for electric cars, and really contribute to the world economy and to the solutions for the problem, and also help the economy of Israel. So I think that definitely the country can benefit and also contribute to the rest of the world in some of the solutions.
Absolutely. Now, what does the government intend to do now? I mean, what are some of the action items that Israel needs to take? We've seen changes such as recycling and the use of paper bags. What else?
Well, those are fairly small, or I wouldn't say small issues, but not directly linked to the climate problem. The climate problem is really related to energy and our use of energy, which is also, we need fossil fuels. We use them to make plastic, so that's also a negative input. But basically, we need to move away from fossil fuels, and we need to move to more user-friendly or environmentally friendly energy like solar, wind, in some countries, hydroelectric power. And so Israel has basically stated now, which there's basically every country had to come for the meeting next week in Glasgow. Every country had to come and make a new commitment of how they're going to reduce greenhouse gases and move towards renewable energy. And Israel has now stated in the last few weeks that by 2050, we'll have 85% of our energy will be from renewables. So we'll decrease dramatically the emissions from greenhouse gases. Some people say it's not enough. Maybe we should get to net zero. That's the expression people are talking about now, net zero by 2050, which means that whatever extra pollution and greenhouse gases we put into the atmosphere, we have to take them out somewhere else, either using technologies or planting more trees through photosynthesis. And so Israel is being part of the solution. Maybe it could be going a little bit faster, but we definitely need to focus on moving away from fossil fuels and going to more renewable energies.
All right, Professor Colin Price, thank you so much for speaking to us about this important issue.
You're welcome.